believe I still sit here and cry.
All right, so we just watched the first episode of Star Trek Continues with Vic
Mignogna.
There you go. And we're just going to talk about what we thought about it as we watched it. I'm Ryan, and I'm here with David, and we are the Convention Junkies.
And as research, before we did the review of Star Trek Continues, we watched the original series. I think it's episode 31 in their production run. It was in the second season, 4th episode, Who Mourns for Adonis. We watched that. We watched the remastered version, actually, and it was a huge improvement over the original series on television.
Amazing.
Yeah. And actually, it fits much better in with the Star Trek Continues since it's been remastered. They're almost identical. And I was struck by so many things just watching the original series. Well, the culture shock of the way they refer to women, and I'd forgotten how dated it can be, even though it's supposed to be futuristic. The first thing I noticed, actually, when I started watching the episode Pilgrim of Eternity, what launched Star Trek Continues, many people consider to be the best fan fiction Star Trek stuff ever, really. I mean, and it holds up. It's astonishing how much they match the original series in even the aspect ratio. The coloring in the background, the saturation of the colors.
It was eerie.
The props, everything.
It was so, yeah. And what made it look even better was the restoration done by CBS Paramount on the original series. Because we watched the trailer for the original series, and it looked like crap.
Yeah, as preparation, we downloaded the trailer for Who Mourns for Adonis, just because, it was up there. I'll just check that out. And very cheesy, and it looked like it had been run through a sawmill.
Yeah, it was grainy. It had those little lines that you see on used film strip. And then we watch right away the 2.0 Star Trek version of it, and you see the CG, you see the brilliant color of everything, and I guess they had to cut things and do a lot of layering. The sound was phenomenal. It's nothing like what I remember when I was a kid when I'd watch the show on TV. This, unfortunately, is not an episode. I've seen it before, but it's not one of my favorites of the original series. But you can see by them getting the original actor to actually redo his role, it's sort of a good place to start. And they did a really good job, in my opinion.
Well, actually, the one thing that speaking of the trailer, one thing I noticed in the trailer, something that happened in it that made me laugh out loud, like loudly,
yes,
was there was a quick rapid cut of a couple of characters looking at each other, and it happened very quickly, and it happened too fast.
Yes.
And when it did, I looked at you and started laughing. It was like a scene from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
There's an episode of The Simpsons where they look back and forth, and they're like really fast, and they just nod faster and faster, and it was like that. And of course, they managed to squeeze all the best overacting of the whole episode into that one trailer. So I just thought shout out to the trailer. Okay.
We'll provide a link to that trailer down below.
Yes, and actually in the original series remaster of that episode, the print was stunningly crisp. The planet was perfect CGI for I mean, it wasn't too good because they have to sort of blend with Star Trek, but it was amazing compared to what I'm used to seeing, a blurred blob of a planet. Audio fidelity and amazing, and the music, actually, I read this is it's not new music. They made an artistic choice to use only the music that was in the show.
Yes, you can tell.
There's certain things that are really grounded and don't change, like the graphic style, and music and art, the direction and the color schemes. They're very much faithful. But where they did diverge a lot, and I think they're doing this to tie into other generations or to link this to other series that come after it in that timeline. They had this moment where they're in the holodeck, or the beginnings of a holodeck.
Yes.
That was stunning, like, because I thought, oh, here we go, like, this is what they did in the day to cheaply do episodes. They're Paramount, they have a backlog, they go somewhere in California where there's a desert where they shoot westerns all the time because they're cheap. And there was an episode I remember, I'm not sure what episode number this was, where they're in the Old West in the OK Corral.
I remember that one.
So I was like, oh, that's what this is. I saw the clip from the image, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be some kind of Old West theme thing. And of course it wasn't. It was on the holodeck, and that was a good misdirect. And actually, there's a character. Her name's up ahead, but I'll talk about it in a bit. She's the ship's counselor, so they're tying into the next generation.
Yes.
And again, speaking of the ship's counselor, the voice of the computer in this show is Marina Sirtis.
Yes.
Counselor Troy in the next generation. So that was really
the woman you're talking about is Lieutenant Elise McKinnon.
just a lot of attention to detail and a lot of good throwbacks to the fans. By the way, just so you know, the star date when this episode opens is 3468.1 or Earth year 2267. And this is basically 2 years approximately after the events of the episode of the original series where they first meet Adonis on the planet.
Yes.
I believe it's called Polex 4. And of course, I'm trying to actually do a podcast on something like this. You think it'd be simple just to watch an episode and talk about it, but in fact, there are literally 20,000 bits of information you can pull out of the ether to talk about, and I was just trying to find out the actual name of the actor, not her character name, and I was actually on IMDb trying to find out what the actor's name, but I guess I'll have to find out later. I don't want to slow down the podcast. Oh yeah, another thing I pointed out, I took this little note on my notepad furiously as I was watching. They have a wonderful prop. It looks like some kind of, they're on the bridge and they open up and they're just arrived at this planet, and there's this it looks like the old game Simon. It's got like big colorful plastic 70s looking buttons, and it's angular, and it looks like basically like the kids game I used to have when I was a kid. I thought I'd point that out.
No, their set was acquired from a previous production, and they actually spent the money to move from a 2,500 square foot facility to a 10,000 square foot facility, and Vic put his own money and other people's money into building the rest of it. They acquired the actual layout of what it would have been at Desilu Studios back in the 60s, and they faithfully recreated all the halls and everything in the same form it would have been back then. So when they're entering rooms and you see backgrounds, you're seeing it as if you're watching the original series, them coming from certain angles because of the way that their sets were actually designed. So they faithfully went through everything. And if you look at all the lights, no, they're not 100%, but there's some things that are just eerie. The color, they matched everything. I see even on the actual view screen to the side, they have the lights to indicate if they're zoomed in or not. I thought that was a nice little touch, because I saw that literally in the Adonis episode before we watched this. I was like, oh, is that what that is? Because I remember them saying go to a certain view at one point in another episode I watched years ago. And I never knew what that was. I just put two and two together. And I see it all of a sudden the Star Trek Continues. I noticed it again. They've recreated that. I thought that was awesome. Nice little touch. Even the computer cards on the table, everything. Just beautiful.
And I actually think I was trying to find a way to describe the color palette of the show, and I guess it's oxymoronic, because I wanted to say it was bold pastel. Like pastel is usually like sort of a mild color, but they were as bold as they could be with pastel before they, it's not like a light blue, but it's like a light bright blue. It's kind of crazy. It's like saturated.
You're coming from a time where color was new to the television world, and they wanted to milk the crap out of that. They really wanted to show that off whenever possible. So a lot of shows around that time, color was extreme. And just like in the real world of the 60s, everyone dressed like that in those colors. If you watch like the new Star Trek shows, everything is so muted and dark and foreboding. It's fun and easier on the eyes, in my opinion.
The J.J. Abrams reboot Star Treks, they're not as dark and foreboding. They got their own kind of scheme going on. They're not working with pastels, but they're brightening things up. The world of lens flares. Yeah. So it's bright in their universe, in the grounded universe of today, I guess. Actually, you're right when you're talking about the faithful recreations of the sets, the sick bay, the bridge, a random hallway. Engineering, and the holodeck. They briefly touched on that one, and the one that actually I remember looking at going, that's incredible, was the Jeffries tube.
Yes.
And the term greebling is usually applied to something like Lego, when they put a lot of effort, like the the Ghostbusters vehicle has greebling the top and the Lego set to make it look really, you're like, wow, that's like it looks authentic because there's attention to detail.
Yeah.
And I looked in this thing and I was looking around like a kid in a candy store. I wanted to pause it and just stare at all the stuff that was in the Jeffries tube, because there's probably as much work put in the Jeffries tube as there was in the bridge. And even though it's a much smaller space, but and they had the right angle and the guy climbed in and it could have been Scotty. I mean, like from the original series.
I also loved the camera angles were all the same.
Yes, yeah.
It was just like as if you're watching the original series.
Same direction of cameras, yeah.
Yeah, it was, and even the mannerisms. Not all of them, are great, but some of them were just like Vic himself. Wow. And
I'm not here to pass judgment on anybody's acting skill, because honestly, I'm glad this got made. Period. And I cannot assess the quality of anyone's acting, and I wouldn't dare to, because I have no right to.
I look at it as a group of fans who did a really amazing job. Obviously, they're not A-list stars in Hollywood,
But a lot of them.
But I'm saying that they're whether they chose to portray imitate the person of the original character, or they took it in their own direction. I'm just.
They all had a kernel of the original character, and
yes,
some people can channel it more. Some people, like I said,
you said, he naturally genetically has that ability.
Yeah. When you talk in a Scottish accent, you can get really angry really quick, apparently.
Well, he's.
And by the way, I'm sorry. This is going to be a crazy podcast because I'm going to jump from like the end to the middle to the back and forward. It's going to be basically a time shift. Yeah. But the guy that well, first of all, I want to point out a few things about the prequel to this. I don't know if it's a prequel to this. This is really a sequel to the original series, but
yeah, just referred to as the original series.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. We're watching these one at a time. We're not trying to get ahead of ourselves, so we don't know if there's anything else like that ties in time-wise to any other episodes from the original series. But we're just focusing on this one for now. There is an episode, or the episode this is based on. We watched it, and I was amazed at the sexism in the future of even Gene Roddenberry's admired the future where humanity has hope and things are better. I think McCoy says something like, well, she'll get married, then off she'll go out of the service. About the woman that Apollo falls for. I think she's a lieutenant. The sexism, it's there. I mean, it's pretty thick, but I don't think they'd ever say, oh, Scotty will get married, then off he'll go out of the service. Can you imagine? I mean, so that there's some of that latency still there, even though they're trying to look at the future, they're still based in the past.
I've recently started watching the old black and white versions of the Twilight Zone, which is just made a few years before this, and a lot of the cast actually from Star Trek, the original series, are actually in those episodes, and it is a lot worse. Just absolutely crazy how they treat women as just sex objects, and men are superior, and men get all goofy because there's a pretty woman in the room. And the doctor smoking right beside the patient in the hospital thing drives me nuts too, but yeah, no, things change.
I guess we should give credit where credit is due, because obviously Star Trek was a show ahead of its time in a lot of ways. We can't expect it to be living up to the standards of the millennial standards when, yes, they did have different ethnicities on the bridge. They had people of color in roles as superiors and as captains, and and the women were there, so it's not like they didn't try, and they were sort of trapped in their time. I don't know. I don't want to get too carried off.
It's the first interracial kiss on television, right?
Yeah. At some point in that series, and not there.
Not in this episode, no. Right now.
Well, actually, this is a unique situation, because I don't think other Star Trek Continuous episodes are going to be talking about so heavily about a prequel, but they do relate to each other like crazy. Like, you have to have seen that episode of the original series in order to understand what's going on in this episode. One thing that made me laugh, again out loud, once they beam to the planet, and they're just about to meet up Apollo, I guess, all of a sudden the Carolyn starts saying, why am I here?
Yes.
I just thought it was like, these are
useless
really,
or something.
These are really prepared away missions. All the planning happens the second you arrive. Like, I'm surprised they don't beam into space without spacesuits with the way that. I know that's called exposition, and we need it, and it's a way to talk to the audience. But I wish they'd figured out a smarter. Oh, this is like 40 years old now, but that just made me laugh.
Yeah.
And Another thing.
It's actually 50 years old.
Yeah. Another thing that kind of thought was funny was the instant that a hot girl shows up on a planet. There some alien species goes like, "Wow, Earth girls are the best," you know, because he says that. He goes, you know,
Yes.
of all the universe, everyone else sucks compared to Earth girls. I just thought that was funny, and of course the fact that he grows big, which is a sort of a DC joke we have.
Yeah.
I grow big. Yeah, we said that in unison. That was good. Apollo has blue hair, so I guess he's a fan of raves.
Yeah.
I guess that's to make him look alien, because back in the day,
They gave him that hair again at the end of the Continues episode too, I think.
Yeah, but I wasn't sure if it was blue. It just looked like it made him look younger, which I think.
What did they when you met Vic? What episode were they showing there, or was it just a trailer? At the
I was going to wait to address that, but it was What Ships Are For, episode 9 of the Star Trek Continues.
Did you get to watch the whole episode, or were you too busy?
I watched most of it. I actually, you know, first of all, I went to that. We attended Fan Expo.
I think people know that already.
Yes, and we attend events all over the place. As far as we can afford to go, we go, and we get a lot of. I'm sounding like Donald Trump. Believe me, you're gonna like it.
Don't get me started.
No, another edit. Okay.
I'm not editing anything out.
Hold for idiot.
If you're an idiot, you're gonna be on to be recorded for all time.
The worst Donald Trump ever.
Yes.
Okay.
I think Donald Trump does the worst Donald Trump ever, really. But continue.
Okay. I can see the comments.
Yeah.
I was just trying to record whatever I could, because I didn't want to assume what people are going to like and put my own opinion into it. So I just record a lot of things, and then hopefully people find out what they like to watch. But I ended up sitting through this, never having heard. I've heard of it. I'd never watched it, and I watched it, and I was actually blown away with it. I actually really liked it, and I thought, why did it take me so long to watch this? This is phenomenal. This feels like I could watch this on television. This could be on TV.
This is
It's
why
good
we're
enough
doing
to-
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good enough to. It's beyond its genre. This. I'm not the only one. I'm not alone in saying this. This is the internet has agreed. This is like some of the best fan made.
Yeah, fans in general are like flocking to this, and
Yeah.
we're getting tons of comments. People like crazy commenting just on the actual video of him talking about it on our website. So we
It's like
thought
only
we'd
20
address
minutes
it.
long. 20 minutes of talking.
Yeah.
And it got like thousands for us. I mean, that's a lot of views for just a guy talking for 20
I
minutes.
also like the fact that they've given us permission to use clips and do whatever we want with it to let people know about it.
We did, by the way, ask for permission. We contacted Star Trek Continues and asked if we could do some kind of a podcast or a review of their show. Another thing, again, we find out that Apollo is also incredibly sexist. He says something I thought, again, was just fantastic. You seem wise for a woman, about Carolyn. Scotty looks pissed off, of course, because I guess Scotty, I think, has the hots for this woman.
Yeah, well, they also made him into a hothead and an idiot as he keeps attacking a guy who is a god and keeps electrocuting him.
Kirk has to reprimand him. Scotty, chill, you know.
I think a mouse in that situation would get the point after the first time, right?
Prime directive, what? You know. Of course, then at one point, Apollo gives her a makeover. And just snaps his fingers or points at her or thinks, and all of a sudden she's wearing
Yes.
classical Greek
Skippy dress. Yeah.
and then she does a spin wow, these are really nifty, not like holy crap, you just changed my clothes, she's really cool with it. I mean, that happened to Kirk, and all of a sudden Kirk was wearing a dress, he'd be like, what the,
It would be Apollo #allegations.
Yes. Yeah.
Apollo has stepped down as being a Greek god today because of allegations that have arisen.
Yeah. Another thing I thought was kind of funny is when this is all happening, this suddenly this occurrence to Kirk and the crew that they're sort of trapped in this omnipotent person. He doesn't quite rise to the level of Q in their universe of power, but he's still more powerful than they are.
Yeah.
There's a conversation going on the bridge about them trying to deal with this. That's like something with a naked gun. I think Spock is walking from person to person like Leslie Nielsen would do, asking like really pointed, serious questions and moving on right away without them having a chance to react.
Yeah.
That was straight out of like a comedy to me. We learned in this episode that faith from humans is kind of what allows gives them their power. At least we start to learn more about it in the episode, and that when they had to leave at some point because the faith had diminished, that he always had faith that they'd somehow find him again. And they did, and at this point I think McCoy played by Forrest Kelly. This is like the original series McCoy.
Okay.
Yeah, it says that he has an extra organ in his chest that we don't have. So I guess they're saying basically they're like us humans, except there's an extra organ. They're not sure what it does, which you'll find out later what it does. Oh, yeah, in the print, even though they tried to remaster as much as they could, I noticed that a different shot would be dramatically better quality than another. A close-up of Apollo, they'd have time to sit there and edit and make it look fantastic. And they change the angle. They have a different shot somewhere, and suddenly he looks like 30% darker. So they can only do so much with the original print, and they can't spend $10 billion trying to fix it digitally. But we also learned that Apollo needs rest after using his powers too much. So that's when they get the idea they can take him out. At one point, a crazy-looking, bedazzled typewriter-like thing appears in the bridge. I thought it was my second prop that I thought was hilarious. The first one being the Simon game, and then now they have this weird-looking typewriter thing that I've never seen in any other episode of the original series. I also noted that Uhura shows her technical prowess. Normally, she just has a combat thing in her ear, and she's doing. This time, they had her underneath fixing the communication equipment. So that was, and they mentioned something about M-rays, and I don't know what that is. It's probably just goobly-gook, but that's somehow part of the problem they're having is M-rays.
Well, we're not Star Trek, historians, so there could be something that's actually from another episode.
Please, nerddom, tell me what M-rays are and comment below.
Yes.
Of course, this is another classic. A classic of a quote from its time. I think Kirk says, one god is plenty." They're implying that there's only one god or monotheism, Yeah. So it's a bit of a religious litmus test for the Kirk crew there, based in the 60s. There's a scene where they all get together and they'll clap hands to start the process of taunting and then ignoring Apollo, which I thought was kind of forced and funny. I mean, Lieutenant. Oh yes, the scene where Kirk gets ticked off at Carolyn for getting in the way of his plans. Yes, because she doesn't understand what the plans are. He says, "Lieutenant," like you would see in a sitcom from the '80s, like really irritation. Yeah, and of course Carolyn, being a woman in the '60s, totally succumbs to Apollo's charm for a while. Then Kirk has to give a humanity speech to her about her duty to her people and other people that are like her, and that she can touch and feel. And we have a bond. We're the same, and he's just omnipotent power that's trying to control you. So that was a speech he gave, a sort of soliloquy of what it means to be a human being. At least his attempt to explain that. So then, of course, she does come around again. She ends up trying to alienate Apollo, and then he gets really pissed with her, grows big again, makes it rain and storm, and she's like, "Oh, rain, storm! I have to fall down on the ground because I'm a woman." And then the Enterprise lasers destroy Apollo's power source, and it just kind of shimmers away. Of course, you noted that you made like about 20 remarks while you're watching it about folio, sound production, about the sound of wood. When people lean on columns that are supposed to be marble, and you hear creaking wood like a door. You
literally see a concrete column slightly move, like the thing weighs like 2,000 pounds.
From his incredible Hulk-like strength.
Yeah. And they go to walk on the actual Pantheon steps, and you hear wood like you're walking across a deck. Because of course, in reality, it's wood. It's been painted to look like concrete. Right?
I don't know. This just reminded of this. I was mentioned this when I watched the episode with you. The scene where Apollo thinks he's dying or he's losing energy, life force. And he gives a speech that makes me think of Sanford and Son's "I'm coming, Elizabeth, I'm coming." I know you have to watch it, I guess, to get it.
Elizabeth.
I actually had to Google that because
I
know
it was. Actually is?
Yes. Oh. I Googled this because I didn't want to be "I'm coming" something, So I wanted to make sure I knew the name of that. I spent time researching Sanford and Son for this podcast. Actually, Kirk says something like, "Would it have hurt us to gather a few laurel leaves?" So after all that, and after defeating him, he somehow still has empathy for him. And I guess that's a writing tool to say, these are such normal creatures, I think Picard has a speech like this with Q that pisses Q off when he talks about how noble they are. It's like a classical speech.
I'm always driven nuts by these aliens that are incredibly powerful and ancient, but are absolutely stupid compared to humans for some reason.
That's right.
And always dumbfounded and tricked. But whatever, it's TV. And, what else are you going to do?
Well, there's definitely there's a lot of superiority in this. they're saying, look at us, look, we're human. We've come so far. Our technical prowess is stunning. Our humanity and our rule of law and our system of regulate. Basically, the Federation is like utopia. So and everything that comes up against them is defeated because they have the better system. It's sort of an allegory of capitalism and Western democracy versus, communism or totalitarianism. And I think that is, you see that in this show. They're basically, what's the word? When you have like a wartime poster, the propaganda. Mm-hmm. They can be bullish because in the 60s, it was like a high time. 50s and 60s were the post-war boom. So there's a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
And when anytime they run up against a culture, it's not theirs or this warlike, or they always seem to come out ahead because of the way of life. And that's kind of what they're saying. You're a god, but we're god-like. We're god-like in our power, and in our faith in each other, and in our technology and our ingenuity. So we've defeated you because we've gone past you, except for the fact that they still believe in one god, and women have their place.
Yeah.
So they're not perfect. But the star date they start out in the episode with, in the Star Trek Continues episode of the Pilgrim of Eternity, is 6147.3, which they say is nearly 2 years after the events. Okay, we talked about the holodeck already, which I still think is like the best part of the episode. It's my favorite part of the episode.
I'm surely glad to hear that you like the first minute of the episode.
Well,
most.
Because I love the way...
It went all the way downhill from the very first minute.
Look at it. It's a personal favorite of mine. It's a scene that right away... Yes, this is the original series timeline, but that's this really smart way to pull in the whole universe. It pulls you into every other Star Trek show that's ever existed because of that.
But you sort of have to talk about the holodeck, because look at our modern time right now, where we are and what we can do. And we can't wait a couple hundred years for them to get to a real holodeck. We'll have probably that real technology in the next 15, 25 years.
I think the actor that portrays Scotty in this episode,
Chris Doohan, who I believe is the son.
Yeah, that is just phenomenal. Like, that's continuity for you. I think they make it seem like he's behind the holodeck technology, like he's the one who's creating it and tooling with it. And I'm not sure if this stands up in Memory Alpha Prime or on the Wikipedia for this site, but I'd like to know more about that. I noticed that they used a lot of when they open up the shots of of the ship, they weren't as clean as the remastered versions of the original series episode. It seemed like they took an earlier print and they tried to clean up a bit of the ship. But they did their own thing where they tried to make the ship look more gritty like it would in the original series. So I'm not sure. What was the date of the first episode? When did they start doing this? 2013. I guess it was around. I guess it was just a conscious decision to make it look similar to the original series ship. The Sulu was the guy from Mythbusters.
Oh yeah, I knew that. Imahara?
Yeah, I did not. I heard something about it, but I didn't know what his role was in the ship. I thought he was a technical advisor. I didn't know he was on the cast.
Yeah, he's actually from Industrial Light and Magic before he was on Mythbusters. So
he started... he has a hell of a grounding in sci-fi then. He'd want to be in a show like this if he was a fanboy. And the music, and I think I may have mentioned this earlier, but they made a choice artistically to not make new music for the show, but to use only the music that was played in the old episodes to have just a complete continuity. They didn't want to create their own musical direction with the show. They wanted to be a faithful recreation of the original, or to continue its mission. Uhura was awesome. I actually like the person who plays her. She's more, she's just more bold in the series, more vivacious. She's got more to say, more to do. I noticed in the show, in the beginning opening scene, there's a lot of conflict in the bridge when they have to destroy something that's going to destroy them, and they realize that there's life forms on the ship, and they have a lot of back and forth at the last minute because they want to actually save those occupants. Which is the kind of the spirit of the Federation, of first do no harm. It's almost like the oath that doctors take, and they made a great deal of effort to actually make that a plot point. And of course, as you know, the same actor who played Apollo in the original episode, the original series episode, Who Mourns for Adonis, reprises his role, and apparently Athena, his wife, in the show, or his partner, whatever you call Greek gods who get together, is Diana Hale, his actual wife.
Oh,
So that was a nice little touch too. And actually, a little nitpick. The folio issues from before when he leans on a wood sounds coming from supposed
yeah,
marble.
concrete pillar.
Yeah. Sulu leans when they're all chit-chatting on the bridge, and I can definitely hear wood going. So I know that was a.
Yeah.
They're being faithful to the original, aren't they? They have to have wood sounds if they're going to be faithful.
Yeah.
Another thing I liked about it is they have to do a spacewalk, and I don't recall ever seeing a spacewalk in the original series.
No,
ever.
they did it in the movies, but they didn't.
But
do
not in the original. And so they made it, and he even called it an AVA, which is a nice level. I think that's a NASA term, and that was nice to see. Really interesting to seeing them walking on the ship.
That was Jamie Bamber from
Yeah.
Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, a guy makes a cameo appearance.
I'm pretty sure he had a red shirt underneath that suit.
And even though I knew he was a cameo, I didn't actually notice his face that much because I guess he was wearing a red shirt, and I was focusing on the main character. So he slipped by. I'm like, oh, that was the guy floating in space, the guy that died. Apollo does a really nice speech. I didn't have time to write it all, and I couldn't figure out where it was from, but it sounds something like probably Homer's Odyssey or some kind of really beautiful classical piece of literature he read when his wife sort of vanished or passed on, and that was kind of nice. They gave him a time there to do like almost a thespian speech. Now I noticed right away, okay, another beautiful, I guess, redhead. I'm not sure if I guess the original love interest in the original series was blonde, but this one's the beautiful Captain McKenna was going to be the love interest for, or something that would attract Apollo's attention. And she, of course, goes in and talks to Apollo, who's now in sickbay because, totally missed this part. They somehow move or beam themselves over to the Enterprise from the remnants of their arc that they're on, floating in space, and they find out that this is the guy from that 2 years ago. And then she goes to him in sickbay, and she starts talking to him, saying, "Oh, I had a friend, Carol, and she was my friend, and she died helping others because she left the ship after this because she was distraught over it, and she wanted to change the pace." And Apollo says a lot of nice things about her. When the guy Jamie Bamber, he flew off into space?
Yes.
Wilhelm scream. There you go. Tidbit.
Did they do that?
Yes,
Oh.
I definitely heard a Wilhelm scream. I know people follow that stuff, so
And of course, Grandy Mihara being from Industrial Light and Magic, the people that pretty well pioneered the living crap out of that in all the Star Wars movies. That makes sense.
there's a really neat scene where Apollo says he's watched the history tapes.
Yes.
And he turns the monitor around and shows that he's watching the launch of the Apollo 8 mission in the 60s, the famed NASA pioneering space
Especially when he's
flights.
going back in history, starting to he's not watching the launch of Atlantis or Enterprise or Columbia in the 80s or something.
And by the way, Uhura, they really channeled the crazy cheesiness of the occasional hippy dippy stuff they did in the original series. She sings. There's a scene where they're singing, just like the
And you can tell though that she's lip syncing. I guess a song that she's recorded earlier.
But that made me that was a wonderful touch because it really grounded you in the cheesiness of the series, or the occasional cheesiness of it. And Apollo sings too, and he's very more musical and lyrical than I've seen in the previous episode.
Did he sing in the original one?
I don't believe so.
Oh,
no,
okay.
he just spoke poetically, but this one
I
he
wonder
actually
why
sang.
they went that route.
Well, because she sang, I think he was just matching the energy of what she had to offer.
Yeah.
Of course, as he starts to entertain them, and the crew follows him, he starts to feed off him, and he gets more power from it. And of course, at one point, Kirk has no shirt on, and Lieutenant McKenna comes in. And of course, that's a whole big, sexy beefcake thing they do there. Apollo resurrects Uhura because she dies at one point due to static energy buildup in the systems related to his own energy. And when he resurrects her, tries to be selfless and sacrifice himself to save her, they discover that actually gives him energy too. Not as much energy as adulation, but it'll keep him living forever. So then he discovers a life of sacrifice will give him benefits without the omnipotent power that he had before.
Yeah.
And he has to be dropped off somewhere, so they end up putting him somewhere like an Earth-like planet in its 14th century development. And basically that's it. They get consensus. Even Scotty comes around and says, okay, let him do it. So Scotty stopped being a hothead and has come around. The end date of that episode and the star date is 6147.9, and it ends with, this is classic Trek. Typical banter between Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, with Spock as the victim of their jokes. And well, if they'd been to Vulcan, they would have made fun of you too, or they would have liked you too, so it's like kind of a nice throwback, because they always did that. McCoy and Captain Kirk would always joke around.
They were assholes. Yeah.
Yes, they were bad people. But one thing I noticed, that this was unique. I'd never seen this in an original episode of Star Trek, was an epilogue. Like they did that. They play the music and the weird image. Well, they do the weird images in this one, just credits. And at the post-credit scene, the 1 year later, on that same planet where they dropped him off, some guy's stuck and his wheels off and his cart's damaged. And Strolls, this guy, comes in and fixes their issue, and he helps them selflessly. And it's you churn and you find out it's Apollo, looking younger, possibly with bluish hair. So it's just a nice ending that you would see that you wouldn't have seen back in the day, but they did that now to wrap up the story. So it gives people information like, I wonder what happened to that guy, or they're giving you a clue. Everything's working out. So I think that's the way of saying, we're putting a button in it, that one's done, we're not going back to it. All in all, really a wonderful first episode. I'm really looking forward to seeing how these churn out. We're going to be doing this for all the episodes.
Yes, we're going to do one a week, hopefully.
One a week. And again, all because last couple months ago I went to Fan Expo. I listened to Vic Mignogna talk about his project, and he had a lot of passion. He was actually crying at the time after premiering it, because he said he put his heart and soul into it, and it's even after all this time he gets emotional about it, and he got a fan in me. So we decided to do this with their consent, and we hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for watching this episode of Podcast for the Win. It was supported in part by volunteers and donations from our subscribers. If you would like to help with future projects, please visit us on our Patreon page. Please click like and subscribe to see more great videos.